The other day, I was compelled to watch the Megaman NT Warrior series, and I hadn't watched this series in a good long time, mind you. It's probably been at least a few years. It's not exactly easy to find, and I just went looking for it, and it was in that I, going down the rabbit hole that I have a tendency to do, realized that there was a follow-up series to it called Megaman Star Force. This is a series that, as I went looking for it and did manage to find a few episodes of it, not exactly in the most legal manner, but that's beside the point, I found out that this series has by far got one of the most compelling, if not tragic, backstories to it that I think I've found in an anime series in quite a while. Now, really, to start things off, we need to go to the video game section of it for just a brief moment, because this anime series was developed as part of like a advertisement, if you will, for the games themselves. And the games focusing around the astrology, zodiac signs, and all this sort of mystical stars related stuff. It, for lack of a better word, it struggled. Really, that's the best way to put it, is that it struggled. None of the games were all that well reviewed or well received, but they sold well enough to, at the very least, get some sequel series. And now, I don't know how many of you out there watching this remember this video game series, or the anime for that matter, and how many of you out there may have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. Basically, the best way I can put it is that the Megaman Star Force video games were direct follow-ups to the Megaman NT Warrior series of video games, or Megaman Battle Network, I think is what the video games were called. And then the anime was the Megaman NT Warrior. The anime, however, right off the bat, because we're just going to jump to that at this point, so that I can stay on target and focused on what I want to talk about, it was nothing short of a convoluted mess. Right off the bat, the biggest issue this series had was that every single episode of this 55-episode series was only 10 minutes long. That was weird. That was very weird. And mind you, this was 2007. This was a time frame when traditional broadcasting was still very much the way to go for consuming your television media. It was not so much the era of streaming that we're currently in right now. And as a result, this series already right off the bat just struggled. You follow that up with what went wrong in every possible conceivable manner for this series thereafter, and you've got just the perfect storm of a mess. You see, what happened is that Megaman Star Force was exclusively held to streaming services. And while you might be thinking today, well, that's not a big deal, that's not a problem, that's very normal. This was 2007, not 2025. And if you think that it is bad now with how many different streaming services we have that hold so much content exclusive to it, causing you to have to spend so much money on all this, in the previous era, before streaming became the height of popularity that it is now, you used the streaming to catch up on the episodes that you missed when you missed the episode on the cartoon block, like 4Kids or Fox Kids, whatever. The point being in all of this, that right off the bat, you had an oddball of a series that was exclusively being held to streaming services in an era when streaming was only just really getting off the ground as a form of actual media consumption. On top of that, this series was not on anything like Hulu or Netflix or any of the popular ones that you hear now. Instead, it was originally held on Toonami Jetstream. Toonami Jetstream was a streaming service exclusively for the Toonami cartoon branch that at the time in 2006 when it was first launched, minding you that it did close down in 2009. The Toonami cartoon block on Cartoon Network was nearing its initial cancellation. Toonami was at one point canceled in 2008 before being revived many years later. Why that was, I don't know. I remember being very disappointed, upset, and a little distraught that it was gone because I loved Toonami and I knew so many who also loved Toonami and did not understand why Cartoon Network and the Warner Media Production Company canceled it. Needless to say, it would eventually be revived, but Toonami Jetstream was not. As a result, there for a while, Megaman Star Force, which was exclusively held to Toonami Jetstream, as I mentioned before, just seemingly disappeared. 3 years later, Viz Media, the company that dubbed Megaman Star Force, would ultimately create a streaming service called Neon Alley. Now, Neon Alley struggled in many of the same ways that Toonami Jetstream was. It was a unique, exclusive type of streaming service for a specific company, that being Viz Media, that ultimately wound up getting integrated around 2015 into the Hulu streaming service before being fully absorbed by them and then disappearing in 2016. This caused trouble for the Megaman Star Force series because twice now, its home streaming service was completely abolished. And with the absorbing of Neon Alley into Hulu, the likelihood that they were going to hold on to any licenses that weren't going to make them any significant money just wasn't high. Obviously, Hulu held on to ones like Naruto, which was highly popular, but as far as Megaman Star Force, it really wasn't that popular. Add to all of this, because this isn't enough, mind you, the fact that this series only had 25 of its 55 episodes dubbed, for those of you who do care about the dubbing side of things. That made it even more confusing. Really, this series just struggled. And one thing to be noted about this is that with Viz Media, they promised that with their Neon Alley service, that these anime were going to be uncensored. Not that Megaman Star Force ever needed to be censored, it was very child-friendly from the get-go, but their intention was never to cut it down, make a complete shift on everything, and rearrange episodes until they fit a certain format the way that it used to be when we were kids. For those of you who might not know the way things were over on 4Kids or on Fox or what have you, it used to be that many anime would get censored in such a way that they were made more child-friendly. That goes for series like Pokemon and Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And whatever else you can think of. They were definitely heavily watered down in many ways. And Viz promised that with their Neon Alley streaming service that everything was going to be left untouched, uncensored, and that was where things would stand. Unfortunately, after Viz decided to get out of the streaming part of their distribution and just go strictly third-party distribution services for anything that they would dub, it resulted in Megaman Star Force effectively just disappearing, because they're the ones that hold the rights to it, but it wasn't getting licensed out to anybody. On top of that, no one seemed to really care, because I'm not honestly sure that many people even knew that this series existed. I think, and this is pure speculation on my end, I think the intention was for the series to be put over onto the Kids WB, 4Kids, whatever you want to call it, maybe Fox Kids, it doesn't matter. But the problem at hand is that these Kids WB was going through bankruptcy at the time, and then Fox Kids had already pretty much disappeared. Jetix, which was another one, had been pretty much abolished by Disney. So all of these different anime-centric show blocks were just completely abolished around this time frame, which meant that Mega Man Star Force didn't really have a true home to go to, at least not in the traditional sense of media. And I think that is why they put it to purely exclusively streaming. And for those of you who did have the internet already at that point, which is not surprising in 2007, I think most people did, I personally did not. Could not afford it at the time. In that case, maybe there's many of you out there who remember the series because you happen to watch it. Ultimately, this was a case of a series that got bounced around so much in awkward places that it didn't get a true home for, that it ultimately just faded away and disappeared. You can go and find this series if you're willing to take a chance on some of the more sketchy pirated websites. You could totally do that. I happen to find 12 of the 13 episodes over on YouTube, just saying. Bear in mind that episode 8, which does comprise episodes 13 and 14 of the series, is completely missing from YouTube, which is a problem because that was the start of the Gemini Spark introduction as major villains, as well as establishing that their host human has dissociative identity disorder. And as a result, when they take over, they split the two identities into two separate characters. It should also be noted that this series only had 25 of its 55 episodes dubbed. Viz's only change that they ever made to these series was that because these were 10-minute episodes, they combined two 10-minute episodes to create one 20-minute episode. However, as a result, when they dubbed episode 25, the last 10 minutes were oddly filled with a compilation compiled look back at the last 25 episodes before calling it on that for the entire series, and it definitely made for a mess. As far as TV production broadcasting goes, it was only ever aired on Cartoon Network one time in a special 2-hour compilation block that was just a combination of the first 16 episodes of the series. And it was so cobbled together in the worst possible way that it aired one time and vanished. I was still watching Cartoon Network at this time, but I don't even remember them even so much as bringing it up. I don't know that they even bothered to actually talk about it, advertise it, anything. I think it quite literally was just quietly thrown on there, aired one time, and then disappeared. Ultimately, what was created was just an absolute disaster. And mind you, I've also looked into this. Out of sheer curiosity, I wanted to look up the voice actors because I am a lover of voice actors and their incredible talents. And I found that there is not a single one of the phenomenal voice cast, of which they had a true star-studded cast of voice actors on this show, who have it listed on either their Behind the Voice Actors page or their wikis. The only place anywhere where this series has got its credits to the voice actors listed is on the IMDb page, and I think that's only because it links directly back to the IMDb page of the Mega Man Star Force anime itself. Other than that, you will not find a listing on any of these voice actors' pages for this show whatsoever. It's as if it's been scrubbed clean. I don't know if maybe they wanted to forget the series, or if maybe they just didn't care because it was such a flash in the pan and disappearing type of show. Whatever the case, there's not a single person who has it listed anywhere. And we're talking about heavy hitter voice actors like Patrick Seitz, Kyle Habert, Michelle Ruff, Melissa Fawn, Jason Spisick. You've got so many incredible, well-known voice actors out there who were a huge part of this show, and not a single one of them has it listed on their personal pages. It's just as if this show was just made to be forgotten, and that is kind of sad. I can't imagine that if you were to go and ask any of these voice actors at a con or whatever if they even remember dubbing this show. I would expect that none of them do, because this was almost 20 years ago. And I personally wouldn't expect a single voice actor, or anybody for that matter, to remember something they worked on 20 years ago. I really just wouldn't. But I just thought that was so strange, the way that this show got treated. It was the perfect storm of everything working against it from production to end. Truthfully, that's about all I have for this show. I know this is not the most informative little video that there ever was, but I just wanted to give you a rundown of the mess that this show ultimately wound up being. And it is a shame, too, because I did enjoy what I've seen of it. I have done some looking to see if I could even find, at the very least, the other 30 episodes in an English sub somewhere, anywhere. And I haven't had any luck. I'm not particularly willing to take my chance on some of these sketchier pirating websites. So that's about where it's going to stop. I can honestly say that I would love to see more of the series, but I've looked as best I can, and I'm not going to be taking any chances on my laptop. So hopefully you guys will have had some better luck in seeing this series than I have. I would have liked to at least seen how it ended. I was honestly very compelled and intrigued by the use of the Zodiac as it was in this series, and I thought that at least the premise had a good starting point. I just would have liked to seen how things turned out, because unfortunately with this show and with the Megaman NT Warrior series, Megaman hasn't exactly had the world's best track record here in the US as far as the animated series go, and that is really a pretty much crying shame. Anyway, that's all for today. Subscribe, check out our series for more. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. This was a solo video on my end, but we often do a lot of tag team work, Shy and I, as a podcast of animated chaos that we enjoy talking about whatever it is we like to talk about. And if you might have something in mind that you'd like to see us talk about, please, by all means, throw it in the comments somewhere. We would, at the very least, look into a series if there's something that's intriguing you, catching your eye. Maybe you want us to go over some older series, or maybe you want us to go over something new. Whatever the case, we're here to talk about it. So talk to y'all later.